Well, it's the end of the week, Friday. It's always great for going uptown because it's full of bustle and people, and we go up there today and we catch up with the talk and the excitement. It was a special day. Flower Power had something to do with it. And also today, our hardest worker will be going out to Riverton, the night shift in the Riverton Hospital. Check that out. And what is it about New Zealand? What is it about Southland? We seem to attract the best coaches from around the world. Paul Wright, a top professional coach over in England, now in New Zealand, and telling us how well our squash proteges are going to be going here in the south. But first up tonight, well, in June 1994, on the 20th of June 1994, a black day in New Zealand's history. The Bain family of Andersons Bay in Dunedin all but wiped out. The father, the mother, Margaret and Robin, and two daughters and one son, found dead, shot in their beds. The sole survivor, David Bain, subsequently found guilty of their murder. The case went to appeal, it was tossed out, and the Privy Council refused to look at it. Is that the end of the story? No. Well, Joe Karram has written a book called David and Goliath, where he sets out to prove that David Bain is innocent. Welcome into studio tonight, Joe Karram. Good evening.
Good evening.
And Fergus Moore. Good evening to you, a lawyer from Invercargill.
Good evening, Joe.
Joe, why you're not a lawyer, no. So why did you get involved and try to prove David Bain's innocence?
Well, it was an accident. I responded to an appeal for funds, thinking I may be making a contribution of $100 or whatever. I received more information. I subsequently met David. The contradictions were so ridiculous that I decided to take a closer look. And not that I needed or wanted David to be innocent, but upon looking, just could not come to any other conclusion.
Fergus Moore, what does Joe have to do to turn over that appeal?
Well, he's gone through the process at the moment of the High Court, the jury trial, Court of Appeal, Privy Council, and really he's asking for prerogative mercy from the Governor-General.
Mm-hmm. And how would he get prerogative mercy? How does that happen?
Well, his lawyers are going to be having to make an application to the Governor-General, and in the hope that there is new evidence, such that the Governor-General remits it back to the Court of Appeal for it to reopen it.
Joe, have you got new evidence that David Bain is innocent?
There's a volume of evidence. Unfortunately, it's an incredibly complex case and it needs to be looked at in its entirety, but there are 3 or 4 very compelling factors, and most of them relate to serious anomalies and deficiencies in the way in which the police conducted their inquiry.
Is that enough, Fergus Moore, deficiencies in the police? Is that enough to turn a case around?
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't suggest that it in itself would be, and probably Joe's about to say that, because after all, those matters could have been looked at trial and covered by defence.
So you have 3 major new things.
Right,
there.
we have, through the discovery of further documents, source documents from the police, which weren't discovered under the original discovery procedures, also working papers from the ESR, we have established a considerable amount of blood on Robin Bain himself, which professional scene analysts would say, and are saying, could not possibly have come from his own wound. The police knew this blood was there and failed to have it tested at the time. Of course, if any of that blood is found to be, let's say, Stephen Bain's, for example, with whom there was a struggle, one would throw considerable weight onto the fact that Robin was the assailant.
Fergus, in the judge's summary, there's a mention that there was no other blood found on the father.
Well, I think
Robin Bain.
The concern from Joe's perspective is that there wasn't the testing of all the available blood to be tested.
Is it too late to test it now?
Well, I would suggest that there are procedures obviously
it even
available.
goes further than that. The judge, in his summing up, said to the jury, it is the Crown said to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that how is it that Robin Bain, if he was to be involved in the murders, was found in completely blood-free clothes? He had substantial blood staining on his right shoulder, his hat, his hood, his left hand, the back of his trousers, the front of his trousers, and the bottom of his trousers.
Inconsistent with one shot to the head.
And it could not possibly have got there from one wound.
Why would have Robin Bain needed to change his clothes if he was the murderer?
Well, he wouldn't have needed. Well, the fact is he didn't. He had this blood all over him, but it was put to the jury that he didn't. Right. And it wasn't contested by the defence, which is an alarming failure, which is highlighted in this book.
One of your main points is the motive, isn't it? After all, the question is the intent to kill, and it's a question: was it Robin who intended to kill, or was it David? And Mr. Cottle's evidence, which is the one that's gone through all the judicial process, is not able yet to be admitted. Here you've got some additional corroborative evidence to back up what Mr. Cottle said, but can I put it to you this way? Is it possible that David Bain was himself involved in any of discussions over that weekend about what Laniette was disclosing?
We're talking about the incestuous relationship between...
Okay. Well,
the father and
according
the
to David, he wasn't. That's according to David.
Right.
The real factor is here that if Laniette's disclosures were to come to light, it's the father's life who would have been thrown into total disarray. I mean, he was already in a seriously depressed state of mind. He was living in a degenerated state, filthy caravans, filthy vans. He had no money. And the consequence of Laniette going to seek help, to have her prostitution, drugs and this incestuous relationship sorted out, would have been that Robin Bain would have been exposed and probably arrested.
Joe, wouldn't the defence have already noted that and pointed that out?
No, this evidence was never heard by the jury. And in the Court of Appeal, when Michael Guest appealed that the judge was erred in not allowing this evidence to be heard, the Crown actually said that had this evidence been heard by the jury, it probably would have tipped the scales. Now the point is that in the time since my involvement, we have 7 entirely independent people, none of whom knew Cottle and none of whom know each other, one of whom is a professional medical person who was associated with Laniette herself, who have fully corroborated and to some extent even extended upon the evidence of Dean Cottle.
What about the possibility, if I could, that David Bain did know of what the revelations were, was of a character that wouldn't let any of his friends believe that, you know, this could happen in such a family.
This is the motive for David,
Yeah. He wants to wipe out the family because he doesn't want it exposed.
Right, well, let's work on the balance of probabilities. One can accept that David may well have been so disgusted he would shoot his father, punch him on the nose, get real angry. This is what you've been doing to my daughter. Maybe even shoot him if we take it to the extreme. Why would he shoot his mum, his younger brother and his other sister?
Because they could reveal it too. The whole shame of it has to be buried.
Well, as I say, we can only put it on the balance of probabilities.
Yeah.
We have to wind it up there, guys. Do you think there's enough to open the case, just from what the little you've heard?
Well, it's difficult to answer that. Of course, as counsel will be saying quite definitely, but if he can introduce fresh evidence, then of course the Court of Appeal could look at that. At the moment, it might just be a re-evaluation of existing evidence that wasn't properly put at the appropriate forum.
Yep, Joe, and finishing off, is there a prospect of the case being reopened?
Colin Withnell has said that in his opinion, he's an eminent QC from Dunedin, 30 years experience, that in his opinion he stated publicly, because of the manner in which the evidence was put to the jury, that the jury made an incorrect decision and a grave travesty of justice has occurred.
Thank you very much, Joe Karram and Fergus Moore. And of course, the details on those things that Joe's hinted at here tonight and picked up the major points are in his book, David and Goliath, which is on sale now. We've got a copy to give away from Preston's Plus a little bit later on. Also coming up in the program, our hardest worker from the Riverton, the night shift in the hospital, and we go uptown to find out what all the talk and the bustle and the excitement was about today. See you shortly.